So I've been hearing a lot of people talking about the year of the horse, which is quite honestly, it is a transition year, but it's also another way of marking Saturn and Neptune going into Aries, and literally it's almost like kind of like lays on top of each other, where Saturn and Aries transit and they are holding hands at 0 degree Aries is when that year of the horse basically begins and is inspired. Neptune goes into Aries today. The no more in Pisces in our lifetimes. It goes into Aries today, and it's around taking action around your spirituality. And what I mean by that is you addressing the spiritual awakening that you're having. Now, spiritual awakening is not cute. It's nothing that ever looks adorable or even remotely looks powerful behind closed doors. It's something that takes a lot of work and a lot of effort to do. And I'm going to kind of go through the timeline and what it could look like, but it's something that I'm going to be exploring over the next 6 months of what it looks like for all of us and how it comes forward. But when Neptune first went into Pisces about like 12 to 14 years ago in that mark, chances are that we would have explored something deeper about ourselves. For me, I know that I talked about this in the Neptune video from a couple days ago, but it was around 2012 I started getting really serious about my spirituality. But it wasn't until 2021 that I had my rude awakening, and then that transitioned into my true spiritual journey in 2023 that looked nuts. A lot of times when we have a spiritual awakening, what it looks like is not us realizing that we don't have power, or our power lies within a predetermined deity, or an energy or another person outside of us. It's actually us realizing that it all resides within. And with that comes a lot of responsibility, ego death, and it tests us. We go through dark nights of the soul. Now, a lot of times when we go through a spiritual awakening, it could look like many things. So I'm going to kind of go through all of the things of what it could look like. We could have a pivot and a shift around our belief systems that support a power within modality. For me, that was going into witchcraft in 2012. I was really dove into it. I had kind of played around with it before, and I was going in and out of community, but I really committed to that, back at that time. What it can also look like is a massive catastrophic event that pivots and shifts our belief system into action. A lot of times that could look like an event that happens in our lives. It could be a catastrophic event in nature. It could be a death, or it could be like a loss of a job or a relationship, right? There is oftentimes in spiritual awakening what I call a dark night of the soul. And our souls actually aren't doing the work. It's our higher selves doing most of the work. But what a dark night looks like is where we have this ego death and we lose hold of everything material, and then lose hold of a lot of relationships as well. And we hit this point where we have to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, are we good with who we are? Are we in alignment with who we're supposed to be? And if not, what are we willing to do to shift that, right? I'm going to give you an example. In 2021, I lost my brother, Sean. And I really had this moment where I was like, holy shit, he was so young. But I also had this moment in my grief of, I'm also young, and I'm very unhappy in where I'm at in life. And it wasn't something that I was like, oh, things aren't working my way. I was in a 10-year marriage. I was, living in New York City in a way too expensive apartment. I was in television, and I was still pretty much in demand, even despite COVID, right? I was still active in a 20-year career at that time. But when my brother passed and I was forced to look at everything, I realized how many things I've been holding on to that actually did not belong to me, that I was operating in a paradigm of lack of power. And I let go of all those things that I just talked about. And I mean, my brother passed in January. I was living in I loved my camper, my RV, old girl. I was living in an old girl with literally nothing in my bank account. By the end of that year, I let go of everything and I shifted everything and I gave away that power. I relinquished that lack of power, excuse me, that I was lacking in my life, in all points of my life at that time. And there comes a point where you let go of everything, that you hit the very beginning of your spiritual awakening cycle. And the first glimmer that happens when your intuition wakes up, when you let go of everything and you navigate that, you ride that dark night of the soul like a fucking pony, you hit this point where you're like, I do have power. Like I do have this within, and you start to see glimmers. Now, the first glimmers that you see are usually angel numbers, which I fucking hate. They're like the basic bitch version of signs and synchronicities. They're not even angels. Like if there are angels in your life is exploding. What they are is they're signs from your higher self. And angel numbers are like, it's like the 1111 you see on your microwave, or, the synchronicities and numbers happening in your life. What your higher self is doing is actually aligning you to the physical world around you. So it's saying, hey, you're in the beginning of a chapter. Hey, you're in the middle of a chapter. Hang in there. Hey, we're at the end of this chapter. It's done. Move the fuck on. Or saying, this has been dead and like beaten for a while. Like just let go of it. Like a lot of times that will happen. When we graduate from that time in our lives into something more meaningful, that's when we start to have and experience the signs and synchronicities that more in the world comes in, like more outside of our 3D world enters in. So once we enter through the portal and we start to realize that our material world can reflect where we are in our spiritual journey, we will have our spirit guides show up. We will also have our loved ones show up. We will have anything that is outside of us. We will see angels and spirit guides and loved ones around other people. We will start to see like different locations holding this very magical correspondence. A lot of times when we hit that point, that's when we hit a point of overwhelm, because our guides are like, oh, you're ready for this. Like, she's ready. Let's throw her into the deep end of the pool. That was 2023 for me. That was when I was like starting to practice mediumship with the public, and I had already gone through my mentorships. That was when I started seeing what spirit guides were, what reincarnation is, what the business model is, why we're here. And I just got a deluge of information. This can look like many different things to many different people. It can look a little bit lesser than or more than, depending on where you're at in your cycle, or even where you're at in your purpose. Not all of us are meant to see everything, right? We're meant to see little pockets and shifts, in places and people. The goal at that point is to keep going, right? Because at that point, you're being asked to see that how magical everything is, how expansive it all is, and how integral of a part that we play in it all. But sometimes spiritual awakenings can also look like something very different. And this is something I'm going to go into in future, reads and videos. But it can also look like a psychotic break. A lot of times if we hold off on our growth in our physical world, and we hold on to toxic relationships, lifestyles, if we hold on to a career that is not meant for us, if we are in a power without paradigm, while trying to embrace our spiritual growth, sometimes we are asked to let go of everything and come into all of it at the same time. That is something that happens when you have not been doing the work, when you have not been letting go. Now, Neptune went into Aries, went into Pisces, went into Aries, like Pisces multiple times last year. And chances are your life was like uprooted, or if you hadn't been making changes, it uprooted everything for you and said, look where you're out of alignment, right? And you had to make a decision at that time. For those of us that didn't make that decision or were too afraid to, at this point, what you would be experiencing is all of it all at once. Because if I know anything, these Aries transits are taking off with or without you. And also the year of the horse is going to start with or without you as well. And so I'll get into it in a separate video, and I'll also write about it as well. But sometimes when we're in that paradigm where all of it's happening all together, we can feel like we're losing control. And spiritual awakening can look like many things to different people, but ultimately you just have to trust your process because it's unique for everybody.